I know for a fact that I'm not the only one who used to search Godzilla on YouTube and watch everything that came my way as a kid. So we're doing a Godzilla tier list. We're gonna be doing a fair bit of oversimplification, and of course this is all opinion based. Godzilla the original. This was the first movie with Godzilla in it. The concept of Godzilla was just invented in this movie. The idea of a semi-aquatic monster that's just the size of a building coming out of the ocean and breathing atomic fire, being born out of radiation as the vengeance of Mother Nature on mankind. All that was invented in this movie. So just based on originality alone, definitely F
Definitely
tier.
S tier.
Godzilla 2014. Now this is gonna be an unpopular opinion, but I actually really like Godzilla 2014. The entire film has a classical monster movie kind of vibe. Most people think this movie is a little too slow and not flashy enough, and Godzilla doesn't appear in too many scenes, but that makes it all the better, because every scene Godzilla does appear in is extremely impactful and just perfect. This movie is also the first Godzilla movie in Hollywood with a Godzilla that actually looks like Godzilla. So Godzilla's monster design in Hollywood has been pretty much cemented by this one movie. And we could have had a much different looking Godzilla that looked a lot worse. So extra credits for that. I also wanted to say this film's CGI is absurdly good for its time. Like I'd say this CGI looks more realistic than Godzilla 2019 or even Kong vs Godzilla. Like those CGIs are flashy, but this one's just more realistic. This movie also introduced the Muto monster design, which is a pretty cool monster design, and originality points on that. And lastly, this is the first movie to bring Godzilla to the international big screen for the first time. I bet many people around the world, just like me, probably saw this movie for the first time, and that was their first time witnessing Godzilla. And of course, who could forget the kiss of death? I'll give 2014 A tier. I do have a cold right now, so my voice might sound a bit different for the next couple of segments. Godzilla minus one. This movie is made in Japan, and it's a pretty high quality movie. It has incredibly good character development and an overall good story. Now, Godzilla is the villain of the story, but that's kind of in line with Japanese Godzilla from before. Now, you might have noticed that the CGI of this movie looks kind of mediocre, but keep in mind that this movie's budget is less than a single episode's budget of a not so popular TV show on Hollywood like She Hulk. The monster design is also pretty good. Godzilla has a jagged look to him, and he also has a healing factor, like he can literally heal like Wolverine. Also worth mentioning, the atomic breath on this Godzilla has a spin to it, so his dorsal spikes don't just light up, they also protrude out as he's charging up for his atomic breath. His atomic breath is more like a bullet. It's like very powerful and very fast, and the sonic boom it leaves behind does more damage than itself. This one definitely gets an A tier. Yeah, this next segment is about to be very controversial. Godzilla from the Monsterverse. I never really liked the Monsterverse movies. My main problem with them boils down to the fact that the movies are basically superhero movies wrapped up in monster movie skins. Kong is Batman, Godzilla's Superman, Mothra is Wonder Woman, I guess. Not sure who everyone else are, but you get the point. The CGI of these movies are good. The monstrous destruction and mayhem is good. What isn't good is the character development. I never really cared about the characters of these movies, like what happens to them. This is unlike 2014, where the movie actually got me to care about what happens to the main character. That's the difference between good character development and poorly executed character development. The other thing I like to describe in a weird way is that the power level of the universe is too high. There are way too many monsters and too many little plots going on, and the monsters themselves are way too powerful. Godzilla, for example, his atomic breath that one time he fires into the sky, the size of his atomic breath compared to the size of his body looks like an ant by comparison. All of this overpowering everywhere makes everything harder to relate to and harder to keep track of scale that makes everything feel irrelevant. I guess if I could turn my brain off and just enjoy the mindless mayhem and destruction of these movies, I would be actually able to enjoy them, but I can't turn my brain off. So unfortunately, B tier. We have made it onto one of the craziest Godzillas of them all, Shin Godzilla. You don't need me to tell you that Shin Godzilla looks different than other Godzillas. The special feature of Shin Godzilla is that he's constantly evolving. He starts off as a kind of sea monster kind of thing and evolves to walk on land and goes through like different phases and eventually makes it onto the final phase. Shin Godzilla also has the most craziest atomic breath. His spine glows purple and then he releases fire from his mouth, and then the fire condenses into a plasma beam that condenses and forms a laser. And he cuts through entire skyscrapers and entire cityscapes with that laser. Chin's atomic breath looks like he'd be able to cut through other Godzillas. And the entire atomic breath scene kind of opera song goes on in the background. And this Chin Godzilla theme goes so hard. I'm not gonna play it here, just look it up. Let me just read some of the lyrics for you. If I die in this world, who will know something of me? I am lost, no one knows, there's no trace of my yearning. And there's the primary voice. And while this goes on, the secondary voice just tunes in and goes, but I must carry on, nothing worse can befall. All my fears, all my tears, tell my heart there's a hole. And this really goes well with the theme of Shin Godzilla himself. Because Shin Godzilla is not just a monster born out of radiation, he's a freak of nature out of radiation. From the moment he steps foot on land, he bleeds from his gills and he's in constant agony. And all he sees is just destruction. So this really fits well. All of that being said, though, the character development in Shin Godzilla is very terrible. Most of the non-Godzilla part of the movie is just spent in different meeting rooms of people discussing what they'll do about Godzilla. So the overall quality of the movie, except for the Shin Godzilla part, isn't that good. B tier. The goofy Power Rangers looking Godzilla. Yeah, I'm compressing a lot of movies into this one category. Just because they're just too similar and also too many. Many people consider these versions as the source material for Godzilla, but I don't think that's true. I think the source material for Godzilla is the first Godzilla movie. These are the sequels of sorts. I think these versions are mostly just made for kids. Like, if you don't agree with me, I'll just show you some things Godzilla has done in these versions, and it becomes apparent that these are for kids. He has done a body slam. He has done a handshake. He had a son that looked like that. He jumped around and danced out of excitement. He used his atomic breath for thrust and took off to the sky. And of course, the flying kick. It would seem unfair comparing these movies to the ones we have today, but I'm not comparing to the current times. I'm comparing to the first Godzilla movie ever. That one looked old, but not goofy. These ones look old and goofy, but at least they were funny at times, especially the flying kick. C tier. Godzilla from funny commercials. Let's go over some of them. This is basically a commercial of a small car. It just has Godzilla going around the city just grabbing small cars that he can swallow and eating them. But then he sees this particular car and thinks it's small enough and tries to eat it, but then he chokes. So he has to spit the car out. And the message is that the car is bigger than it looks. In this next one, Godzilla's destroying the city because it's thirsty, and then he sees water container tanks of different beverages and drinks them, but he doesn't like any of them. But then he sees a giant can of Dr. Pepper, and his thirst is finally quenched, so he stops destroying the city. In this next one, Godzilla's really chill and he just hangs out with the bros, but he gets a little destructive when he gets hungry. Yeah, you probably see where this is going. The only thing that can satiate his hunger are Snickers bars, of course. In this next one, Godzilla's destroying the city, and then Charles Barkley challenges him to a basketball game. Charles Barkley wins because of the extra friction that his shoes provide. And then he tells Godzilla he should really consider wearing some shoes. Nike shoes, of course. Now, there is an innate sense of hatred you feel towards advertisements, but these are pretty funny. C tier. We are now on to the thick boy. Godzilla Earth. This is the biggest Godzilla we have yet. This Godzilla's height is literally almost 3 times that of Shin Godzilla's height. Shin Godzilla being the second largest Godzilla, of course. Now, this is set in an anime universe that's also sci fi and stuff. That's kind of expected because how else would you handle scales of such magnitude? This Godzilla is called Godzilla Earth because just like a normal Godzilla terrorizes a city, this one terrorizes the entire planet. And his powers and abilities are much more than the typical atomic breath. First of all, those dragon or bat like monsters you see, they are created from him. Now, of course, he has the atomic breath that looks like a laser. He also has a sonic attack and a tail whip attack. Anime and sci-fi isn't a very orthodox medium for Godzilla, but the concept of this Godzilla is really cool. B tier. Godzilla from the comics. Yes, there are Godzilla comics out there. The ones I know of are Godzilla in Hell and Godzilla Aftershock. I'm not gonna narrate the stories of any of the comics here, but bonus part, back when I was unhealthy level obsessed with Godzilla, I went through Godzilla in Hell, and it inspired me to make a fan art comic book about it. I'm gonna show it to you now. Excuse the poor art quality because I wasn't that good back then. The next part will be the fan art comic I just mentioned. If you don't want to see this part, you can skip forward because it does get a little boring. Godzilla falls through an eternal abyss. He fires up his atomic breath that slows his descent and he lands safely. Creatures watch him from a distance. He roars and looks at a prehistoric landscape full of dinosaurs. Two small dinosaurs attack him. He kills one with the atomic breath and steps on the other, who walks off into the distance. It starts raining blood and blood thunder. Godzilla in blood. The blood forms a blood ocean. Godzilla swims in the blood ocean until thunder of blood strikes Godzilla. He gets knocked out. Godzilla washes up ashore. He wakes up. In the distance, he can see a power plant. He wants to make the radiation his source of nutrition, but the power plant explodes. An eye opens. But it's not Godzilla's eye. It's the tiny eye monsters. There are thousands of tiny eye monsters everywhere. They cover Godzilla's entire body. And then they start shooting out little lasers. Godzilla wakes up. He brushes them off his body and they go flying. He sees them doing something. They all come together and form a pile and makes a big eye monster. Now Godzilla and the big eye monster get into a battle of who has the strongest atomic breath. Godzilla wins. The eye monster explodes, but the explosion cracks the ground, and the ground crumbles beneath Godzilla and he starts falling again. There's a cityscape and gigantic power lines. Godzilla falls on the power lines. He gets electrocuted for a second, but it's a minor inconvenience, he shakes it off. Godzilla is now in the city. He gets attacked by a helicopter that tranquilizes him with a dart. Godzilla wakes up. He's in a glass box. He charges against the wall of the box, but it only vibrates, doesn't crack. He sees an asteroid coming. It crashes into the city and forms a gigantic explosion. Godzilla can only watch. The explosion draws near the glass box. Godzilla and the glass box goes flying. The walls crack, and Godzilla gets exposed to the explosion. None can die. Not here. You are resurrected. Fulfill your destiny, finish your punishment, and earn back your freedom. Godzilla walks into the distance.
But then he sees something. It's his old nemesis, Ghidorah. Godzilla and Ghidorah get into the fight like they always do. But a giant tsunami approaches them. They get engulfed by the tsunami. Ghidorah can't breathe underwater, tries to swim. Godzilla grabs hold of Ghidorah and drags him into water. Ghidorah drowns. Godzilla is victorious. He swims back up, finds land, and walks off into the distance. Godzilla has been walking for quite some time. He finds the giant tube that leads up to the sky. He decides to climb the tube. He climbs for a long time. Eventually, he reaches a hole in the ground. Is this the real world? Has he gotten out of hell? An asteroid falls from the sky, and from an explosion, a familiar silhouette emerges. It's Shin Godzilla. Godzilla and Shin Godzilla fight. Godzilla attacks Shin Godzilla with his atomic breath. Shin Godzilla attacks back. Shin Godzilla's atomic breath condenses into the laser. The laser is far too powerful. The laser cuts through Godzilla's skin and wounds him severely. Godzilla falls to the ground. Shin Godzilla's atomic breath now condenses, expands back into fire. Godzilla gets put ablaze in a big pile of fire. Godzilla emerges from the fire. He is now supercharged from the Shin Godzilla's atomic breath radiation. He fires his atomic breath this time, and Shin Godzilla is destroyed. Godzilla sees something else in the distance, a light emerging from the sky.
Yeah, it ends there because that's about how much I made before I lost interest. Sorry you had to endure through that. Now, about Godzilla comics aren't bad, but they are an unorthodox medium for Godzilla. D tier. Yeah, it's about to get weird now. Godzilla creepypasta and analog horror. Some very good quality internet horror material exists about Godzilla. The main ones are Man in the Suit, Mushroom Cloud Godzilla, Godzilla at Night found footage, and NES Godzilla. All of these are available on YouTube, so instead of describing them, I advise you to check them out yourself. I will be rating them E tier, but note that I'm not saying they're bad, they're just a different medium than what Godzilla was intended for, so I'm basically using the E tier as the subliminal category tier. Godzilla brain rot. Yeah, a lot of flat out brain rot animations about Godzilla exist on YouTube. These are clearly meant for 4-year-old iPad addicted toddlers. And when you come across these after you search Godzilla randomly, it just feels like pouring acid directly onto your brain. Oh, yeah, and some of them are AI generated as well. F tier. Godzilla animations on YouTube. Not all animations about Godzilla on YouTube are brain rot. These are the ones that aren't. Most of these are just fight simulations about how the fights would go if Godzilla fought different versions of Godzilla or other monsters. And you can tell a lot of them have a lot of time and effort behind them. Some of them also have little storylines that unfold between the different monsters, treating the monsters as the characters. And it's kinda interesting seeing the storyline unfold over the course of several videos. Some of them are also comedy based. This one in particular I find very hilarious. And then there are some that are so realistically CGI'd that they look like actual professional quality material. This one in particular looks actually more realistic than the movies. These are all on YouTube. I highly do recommend you check them out. And I rate Godzilla animations at E tier. Again, subliminal category. I'm pretty sure I still haven't covered every Godzilla to have ever existed, but this video has taken way too long to make already, so I'm just gonna stop. So that'll be it for this video. I can't think of an outro, so I'll just leave you with this.